There are a multitude of ways you can procure items in Skyrim. You can pick them off of dead bodies, loot chests, or buy them from various merchants across the province. But if you want to do things a little bit differently, well, that is what we're going to find out today, as today we see if you can beat Skyrim with only pickpocketing. Well, only using pickpocketed goods to be exact. So that is going to limit my options for the run, and this will probably make things more interesting. As for the rules of the run, the primary rule I have is that I can only use pickpocketed goods. That means I cannot loot, buy, etc. anything. I did run a poll to see if I could buy any potions, but instead I opted to just use my starter healing spell, which won the majority of the votes when I ran a poll, since some healing is better than none at all. So with the run's gimmick established, you can all tell immediately that it will fail because of various key items like the Dragonstone and the Elder Scroll. However, for the rules of the challenge I will exempt them, just so that way we can have a run. As for other rules for the run, I will not be allowing any companions or major glitches in the run. I know you can do some cheeky stuff in a certain jail cell to get to 100 pickpocketing very quickly, but for the run I would play things legit, and this ties into the bonus objectives for the run. I'm not doing any quest lines because if I cannot go fishing, I can't do the quest, but I will make myself get to level 100 pickpocketing without using any glitches, which is basically a requirement for the run. I also want to do the special pickpocket only insta-kill in a Briarheart at some point. Well, with that much out of the way, let's begin this fishing trip. Well, getting the run started, I am going to be going with the Imperial today. You would think I should go with one of the thief races like the Argonian or the Khajiit. In fact, I was originally planning on going as a Khajiit and naming it Purloin, but I will get to the Imperial in a paragraph. Just after a terrible name, I think stealing a purse was the gimmick, but oh well. Well, Helgen was on fire and I can't pick any items, so I just run through like a madman. So heading on into the keep, I went with Roloff as usual, but I do have a good reason as to why. I picked the Imperial because they have the racial power Voice of the Emperor, which lets you cast an Area of Effect Calm spell. I let the captain come through and cast Calm. This is so that way I can pick the key off herself. Managed to get it on a 29% chance, so I will take it. Not much to note heading out of the tutorial, just streaking my way through the escape, and before too long I am outside in the fresh air. Heading on into Riverwood, I stopped by the Thief's Standing Stone since it should be pretty obvious what class I'll be going for the run. I really want to rush 100 pickpocketing for very essential reasons. Well, when I got to Riverwood, I began my fishing adventure, being sure to quick save and pick an item, then repeat whenever I find my target. Not going to need a lot of gold for the run, but I'm definitely going to need food to heal. At least while I get some clothes so I have some dignity, shoes will be something else. Well, a town of citizens isn't going to net any good catches, so I hoof it to Whiterun. When I get to Whiterun, I run into Nazim and get called out twice.
I trust you aren't considering any thieveries.
Soon, I can almost taste it.
Well, I let the sun fade, then start reeling in my first catch, a Whiterun guard. Getting items early on will involve a lot of attempts, so I just get some early levels before things really begin to snowball. A few attempts and I get a bow and some arrows. You can almost tell right off the bat what my build will be. In fact, early on I will be gathering a lot of arrows, quick experience, and a good hook chance too. Since I'm going to be focusing on archery, I'm going to need all the arrows I can get. Adrian had a ring of conjuration. Rings and necklaces are going to be the only enchanted stuff I'm going to be using during the run. And I get some levels so I can have an easier time to pickpocket. The next fishing spot is Jorvaskr, and this place is a prime fishing spot. Aela had 100 iron arrows, so I should be good on ammo for a while. I take the time to fish for a while and even get a steel shield for Rhea. Though I never end up using shields during the run, it was good to have one nevertheless. Then after that I ran to Dragon's Reach to reel in more experience. While the group were arguing, I fished a Jarl and got some more items of note, and Arventus had a pretty good necklace if I want to go down any heavy armor route. I did make a quick pit stop and went home for some items, though I just got some more arrows and called it. Wanting to get the ball rolling, I entered Bleak Falls Barrow. Heading on up to the dungeon, I proved to the bandits why archery is so broken in Skyrim. Well, except I don't have much expectant archery this time. Despite not having any armor, I was able to dispatch enemies with ease. Well, besides they were pretty blind to a barefoot noble. While I carved into the bandit outlaw here, despite having no armor, the guy didn't do too much to me, but at the same time this is a level 1 area. As for the frostbite spider, I abused its AI, and with my range, I had no issues. And now for the run ending part. As to why I do the key item roll, the game would not let me pickpocket Arvel, so yeah. I can only take his key once he failed at killing the Draugr. Well, I stealth archered my way through the place. Since that is my preferred playstyle, don't at me. Before too long, I am at the Draugr Overlord. Yeah, I don't trust taking down the boss with iron arrows and an iron dagger, so I'm gonna work smarter, not harder. I just lure the boss to the slicing room and let the axes chop it up. I loot the key item since the dead don't have pockets, so would have failed here anyways, then return to Whiterun. So when I got back to Dragon's Reach, Delphine was hanging out, so I picked her pockets, and I'm very glad I did, because she had some healing potions. These potions are all I'm going to have to work with for the entire run, barring lesser healing potions and food, because nobody else in the entire province carries potions. Suffice to say, this will end up saving the run. Well, I run upstairs and loot more items off the Jarl, who had the Axe of Whiterun. I don't plan on speccing the two-handed, but it helps. Irlith also had an elven bow, which is a small upgrade. Next up is Mirmilnir before he starts leveling the place. Well, despite having the amazing defense stat of 0, I didn't feel in danger at all for this entire fight. Well, mostly came down to the dragon just ignoring me. There really wasn't much of a note for the fight. I just pelted it with arrows from afar, and by the time it could breathe down my neck, it was already dead. Well, while I could climb the 700 steps to Yelling a Ton's nursing home, I decided to go back to the waters and give Riften docks a go. Before I left on the caravan, some higher thugs tried to stop me, but they were too slow and I was able to sail away. Well, let's just say going to Riften was a very good play. I wanted to come here at some point to kill Grelod because I kinda want to sort of get started on the Dark Brotherhood, more later, and there was a lot of great catches here. When I entered the place, Durak was there to greet me, and he had a Dawnguard shield and a crossbow with some bolts. Very good reels indeed. Continuing to pool around, seems everyone here had rings, and Sapphire had a couple of, well, sapphires, as her name suggests. And a noble had a ring of deft hands to make pickpocketing 15% easier. Hence things starting to snowball at this point. Even Bolly mentioning what I have been doing for the run. Well, after a while I was able to get misdirection, letting me snag some equipped items. Oh yeah, I filleted Grayla like the bastard she is. Inside the Jarl's chambers had a few trophy fish, mostly some good enchantments which will help out the DPS department and survival. Even managed to get a new fishing rod from the court wizard. And I managed to indulge in some irony by pickpocketing Brynjolf. On my way out of the hold all done fishing, I managed to get one last catch from Durak. An enchanted war axe. While I won't be facing any vampires for this run, it is still pretty good for this point in the game, so I will take it. And I was getting pretty close to 100 pickpocket at this point too. Well, next up on the fishing trip was Solitude. I managed to get an even fancier clothing so I could be stealing like a nobleman, which I feel might be an allegory for capitalism, but I don't know. Well, I decided to pay the guards' barracks a visit and rob them as they slept, well, except for one guardsman who was very keen on watching them sleep. After I was done with the military, next up I would fish in the Bard's College. Nothing of note really, I was getting pretty close to 100 pickpocketing, so my last stop before becoming a master angler would be the Blue Palace. Well, I cast my line out while court was in session and managed to get me some valuable rings, and on Elisif I was able to hit 100 pickpocketing, finally letting me get some armor. Yeah, I had a power level all the way up to level 18 just so I can finally wear shoes. Man, that sounds so pathetic. Well, I celebrate the occasion by stripping one of the nearby guards of all his clothing, then immediately putting it on. Now I won't get frostbite. So with the fishing adventure done, it was finally time to tackle the main quest. On my way up to High Hrothgar, I thought I could try to rob the necromancer who hangs out near the ritual stone, but my sneak was not very good today, so I just walked on by. Now it is time for everyone's favorite game show, understanding what the hell goes on in Orf's brain. Today, we have our idiot adventurer running into a mountainside. Why is he running face first into a mountain? Is it A, he wants to become a mountain goat? B, forgetting where the shortcut over the mountain was? C, wanting to avoid the toll road by making a new road? Or D, taking Nazim's advice on going to the Cloud District? Leave your answers down below as we watch a troll attempt to ransack a small settlement. Have you submitted your answers yet? Good. Now back to your regular scheduled derping. On a normal mountain climb up to High Hrothgar, I tend to run into a few wolves. Well, today was a little bit different. Encounter spot number 1, I was met by a bear. At least the first person you meet climbing the mountain had some good fire arrows, so that might help. I never end up using them in the run. The second encounter spot, I was met by a frost wraith, and for the third encounter, a bloody snow saber cat. Beware of wolves, my bass. I had to guzzle a lot of my booze just so I had enough stamina to run away from the saber cat. At least it eventually gave up. As for the frost troll, you can literally walk along the pretty open side pathway and avoid the troll altogether. Given my current setup, I don't fancy fighting it. At the fishing cottage furthest removed from water, I learned how to skip across the water, then repay the kindness by repeatedly shooting Master Bori in the back. I have a reason to level up sneak. Well, I got bored after 3 minutes since the sneak experience was pretty slow along with my archery, so I just said hell with it. I wanted to have enough sneak so I could steal clothes off of bandits, but I never ended up doing that. The next fishing hole I ended up going to is Morthal, which was eventful to say the least. When I got there, I was met by a dragon, and it took the entire town to take it down. Poor Jorn, whose body would never feel the empty feeling of having his wallets plundered. When I got back to town, the cultists decided to make a visit. I would cast Calm on them, and the game wasn't too happy with that. I then stripped them of their clothing and left them to the guards and the cult as I always do. Why did I do it? Because it amuses me. Never would have thought that Calm would end up helping so much during the run. Heading on into Usengrov, I was met by a necromancer and a bandit outlaw. I thought I was in trouble until I focused on the necromancer. When he died, the bandit had a sudden heart attack and died also. Remember to get your undead hearts checked out. Inside Usengrov, it is more or less the same as usual. The first room I let loose the stealth archer specialty. Seems the necromancers have fish eyes today, so I give them a new pair of arrow-shaped glasses. Otherwise, there really isn't much going on through Usengrov, though I might have forgotten about Become Ethereal and had to double back to get it, but oh well. Also, extra crispy spiders tonight. I take a good look at the knot horn, not take it because the run is already in shambles, and left. Haven't forgotten about Arantero. I went back to Windhelm and tell the kid I bashed in his demon several paragraphs ago and could get the ball rolling on the armor upgrade. I'm going to be a bit honest, more or less at this point in the run I start speedrunning the story a bit going forward. The next catch is the Saliconeer trout. The best way to catch this fish while not getting frostbite is to fish in the trees. There the winds will be out of your way, and plus the fish likes biting there. And with a few arrow lines, the big fish was landed. I'm trying to keep potion usage to a minimum since I have very few to work with. I return to Riverwood, get the note I am looking for, and start the embassy quest. Well, first things first, I take a nap only for the boat to drift me to an undisclosed spot. Here I met Astrid, and for once not taking her to Sithis, I do what she says, sort of. I get out of sight just enough so I can procure an entire set of shrouded armor, plus the Blade of Woe. The problem with the blade though is that it only has 6 charges and I will not be able to use it very much because I don't really have any soul gems, and I'll be using it as a get out of Alduin free card. Not as much of a defense boost as heavy armor, but I get to sneak around easier and get to backstab off, which I can do even more damage. I have no other way to get enchantments, so I'm going to have to roll with this. Yeah, someday we'll do the Dark Brotherhood, but not today. So the next up is the embassy. While I wasn't having a hard time up to this point, things are about to get pretty dicey. I grabbed my items, then when I went to try to do some stealth on the Thalmor, they see me immediately. So yeah, I'm in a desperate fight for my life at the very start against High Elves. I used my level up I was banking up for a while to heal up for a damage buff, and even then they were still damaging through my health quickly. I had to use a few of my limited healing potions, and I was barely able to make it out with only a small sliver of health left remaining for the first section. Outside things thankfully weren't quite as bad. Sure, they do see me, and I had a way to contend with some wizards. They wanted to hang out pretty far away. Easily fixed by going back inside the main portion and closing the gap when they would follow. As for the Solar, it was surprisingly peaceful for once. Like the guards didn't want to immediately impale me. I was able to pick off Kassir and the other Thalmor went downstairs. Well, I followed him, picking the lock so I didn't have to loot the chest. I used more ice picks than I would have liked to admit. Inside the jail, I continued to show how Stealth Archer is broken. I interrogated the prisoner for information on Esbern, and the group with the trapdoor key came in. Honestly, they didn't really care that I was able to walk up to them and reel in their keys. I decided not to release Melbourne to his captors, and booked it out of the embassy. A bit rough, but I'm still in one piece. Wanting a break from the Thalmor crap, I decided to do a bit of ice fishing in Winterhold, except my catch is further off to the north. I swam across the icy waters and made it to the Septimus outpost. Here I was able to reel in the pair of keys needed to do the Elder Scroll, so at least these key items can fall in line with the run. Well, one bare fish and an icy jog, I started Aftan. Truth be told, it was nothing to write home about. I just spammed Become Ethereal through the place, not bothering with the fight so I can conserve my dwindling potion pool. At least before Black reached, I did manage to land the unique shield, so I didn't come home skunked. As for Blackreach, sure the atmosphere is great, but there really isn't any fish in the lake, so I just rode on by. I entered the tower, begrudgingly legally purloined an Elder Scroll, then left Aftan. Next up was the Rat Waves. I did look around town to see if anyone had new items or potions, but no. Inside the Rat Waves, I do try to see the entry party had anything good, but nah, no specialty arrows. At least I was able to put my backstab to good use. I tried fishing in the flagon, but nothing fun was biting. As for the warrants, more Thalmor and they were hitting pretty hard, so I just ran on by hoping Esbern will be able to clean up. Well, after talking to the paranoid man, we began our escape, and they were able to best Esbern. Normally Esbern is more than a match for these guys, but I guess that's what happens when you hit level 20. I tried leading them to the flagon, but the patrons were not biting at these worms. Yeah, I just left at that point. Before going to Skyhaven Temple, I decided to plunder Markarth for a bit, mostly for some food supplies because I ran through my supply with the Thalmor wizards. Inside the Understone Keep, I stole a lot of food. Funny how I went from stealing valuables to stealing food. My, how the system has fallen. I do steal an elven mace from the Thalmor wizard that was here, so that will help out with damage for later. I plunder the town, inside and out, and nothing really of note except for the food. I wanted to be as stocked up with Alduin as possibly as I can. It was going to be a hard and long fight. Probably. As for Karthspire, I don't fancy having what is probably an ice dragon breathing down my neck, so I just booked it inside the dungeon. While I was in there, I used my Emperor voice once again to calm everyone in the room. I did this so that way I can pickpocket the Briarheart's heart. After solving some puzzles, get a hook caught up in my hand, I can learn about the super secret fishing spot the Greybeards know of. I make a quick pit stop back in Whiterun so I could disenchant some items, not for the enchanting per se, but just so that way I have a free level up bank for Alduin. Back in High Hrothgar, I learned how to yell at the fog to go away so I can have some better fishing weather, then start climbing up the mountain further. The ice raids weren't really that nasty surprisingly, not using their ice blast, so I'm pretty happy with that. When I make it up to the landmark, my very smooth brain remembered something very important that will help out immensely for the upcoming fights. I worked back to Usengrav and made my way to the Lordstone. General damage reduction is great, especially running light armor. Along the way I do find a random door in the ground. I've honestly never seen this door before, no idea what it does. Well, I touch the Lord, then bash at some bandits so I can return to the top of the world. I get my ears pipes cleaned out by a dragon, then use the legal Elder Scroll to go back in time to prehistoric fishing, back when the bites were dragons. I was honestly dreading Alduin, especially since I'm starting to run pretty low on supplies. However though, I am in my natural environment. I'm an archer main. So by using a rock as cover, Alduin was of no issue. In fact, if it weren't for the meteor storm, I could have done this fight without taking any damage. I started with the fireball staff, but the hook was dull so I swapped back to my bow and was doing much more damage this way. The meteor staggers made the fight more annoying than anything, and plus Alduin was focusing on Parthenax quite a bit during this fight too, which is something I've never really seen too much before except for these recent runs. Well, after 4 minutes, Alduin runs away to his lakeside retreat, so you know what that means. Watching grown adults act like children for a few minutes. Well, with the final battles at hand, and feeling super confident after how little issue Alduin proved, I just ran right into Odovik. I summoned him, told him to sit and stay, and we flew the airline to Skoldalfin. Given how little healing I have, I didn't want to spend too much time outside, so I just ran past everything. Become Ethereal becoming the MVP as always. As for the insides, the AI must have broke very hard because despite all the whites, they had the wrong perception. Either not spotting me, dodge spamming, and not doing anything, I didn't really have too much of a difficult time inside. For the second half of the interior, I bullied a white off its platform, then just did my best to avoid everything for the rest of the dungeon. The Draugr Overlord at the end was a breath of fresh air in terms of ease, plus stealth archery being pretty broken. And so I'm breaking the rules for the last time in the run. This run is in shambles sorta. Back inside, I just run into the portal. I would have to legally procure the staff if I was too slow, so I just avoided the Dragon Priest and ran right inside. As for Sovngarde, I booked it right to Soon. I was pretty nervous with Soon since he can cut your line with relative ease. Thankfully, this is Skyrim, and any grounded, non-projectile based enemy can be cheesed by slight changes in elevation, and it was very evident here. I was able to get Soon chasing back and forth along the rock. Work smarter, not harder. The fight was pretty easy, and I had to double check to make sure I didn't bump the difficulty down. I didn't, and honestly it surprised me with how simple this run was, all things considered. Well, I grabbed my fishing buddies, and it's time to land a legend. As for the final Alduin fight, this fight gave me more problems than the first. Mostly because I didn't have cover to work with. I used my crossbow I haven't used all throughout the run, only 15 bolts but better than nothing. Landing the dragon wrens weren't the best, mostly because of random staggers. After about half the battle I brought out my bow, and Alduin stayed grounded for the rest of the fight. When Alduin was almost done, he started focusing on me and I came pretty close to dying. I did one last tug, landed the mother of all monster fish, had to use my level up so that way I wouldn't die during the death animation, and proved you can sort of beat Skyrim only pickpocketing. Depends on the definition of the key items. If they all have to be pickpocketed, then you can, but if you exclude the key items, then you can. Well, that was actually a very fun run. Going into the challenge, I was afraid it was going to be very difficult, but honestly, it was not that bad. The only parts were actually just anything involving the Thalmor, but the difficulty might have been subdued if I took the Lordstone beforehand. I had pretty good luck with my item pool, mostly with the rings buff and my light armor and other things. Pickpocketing, Duroc, and Asteroid also helped things out quite a lot because they're very potent items. But I think the best thing I did during the entire run was picking the Imperial for the voice of the Emperor. For one, reducing the number of dead bodies to be looted, along with getting some pretty items that would have been harder to get normally. But yeah, overall I had a lot of fun with this run, having to use my healing items very sparingly, having to think about my targets, along with using a semi-archer build. All this coalesced into quite a fun run, all things considered. To be honest, archery is my preferred way of playing Skyrim, so I felt very comfortable in this playstyle. I mean, doing the run in 5 hours despite my low DPS is still very good, even with the hour or so to max out my pickpocketing. Hopefully you all had fun too. If you did, be sure to cast out a like and subscribe for more challenge run misadventures. This has been Orpheolus, and see you all in the next one.